Let's open our Bibles to Exodus chapter 20 and verse 13. We are in the sixth word, or the sixth commandment. You shall not murder. This ought to be a very brief study. Not real complicated, is it? Do you know what murder is? I think most of us know what it is. You would think that would be so. By definition, we have further instruction from God here in the book of Exodus and in many places in the Bible about what murder is. In the King James Version, it says, "Thou shalt not kill." Now that's a little bit ambiguous, is it not? Okay. "Thou shalt not kill" is ambiguous. Why? Why is that confusing?
There's a lot of justified reasons to take a life.
Okay. Kill. Yeah, kill might mean accidentally to kill somebody, right? Kill does not refer to any of the circumstances, whereas the word here is a little bit more specialized, and the word murder is a more specific term referring to the intent, the intention. Yes?
It's strange. In the ESV it says that the word also covers human death through carelessness or negligence.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know there were laws about if you accidentally killed someone,
Right.
you had to flee to the city of refuge. And
Exactly.
Like that.
So that's a part of what we need to look at, I think. We need to look at the whole idea. Exodus teaches us the value of human life in this way. Intent has to do with the personal responsibility. We have a responsibility for our brother. Now, the very first murder was committed by whom? Cain, all right? What did Cain do? Who did he kill? His brother. He only had a few options. If he was going to kill somebody, he could kill his brother or his father or his mother, and he chose his brother. Okay? And then when God confronted him about that, he said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" What does that mean? Am I responsible for my brother? Well, that really is a great thing. The whole Bible is about that question to some degree, is it not? Am I responsible? Now, again, the two great commandments of the Bible are what? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, thy mind, strength. Okay? And the second one is, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So, to love your neighbor as yourself means you are responsible for loving your neighbor. And all of the definition of loving your neighbor is defined by taking care of him. It means that your neighbor might actually be your enemy. Jesus said in Matthew 5. It means that you're not allowed to curse your enemy. You're not allowed to be angry with your enemy. Okay, I'm going to get ahead of myself here. Well, let's look just for a moment. In Genesis, Cain and Abel is in Genesis 4, okay, 1 through 16. Cain rose up against his brother Abel and he killed him. God said, "What have you done?" And then God said to him, the voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And then he said, now, here's a consequence. Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So the idea of blood guilt, he had shed his blood. That's a euphemism for murder, is blood shed. And we call murderers those who are bloodthirsty. And now we get into a theme in human experience. There are people who are murderers we speak of as being bloodthirsty, and those who have what's called a blood lust. Do we not? Okay, there are bloody people. And in England, one of the euphemisms they use, which is supposed to be a very profane word that you really should not use in decent society, is the word bloody. Now, that surrounds this terminology. Let's please all of that surrounds the idea the sin of murder is one of the oldest and most serious crimes in the Bible. I think that's pretty well universal. I think we understand that. We perceive that. That's what this study, I think, is going to try to determine tonight. It is a very serious sin and crime. I think our generation is losing that sensibility. I think we are losing that. As we lose our knowledge of Scripture, as we lose our sensibility, our moral sensibility, we have a generation that does not understand what's wrong with murder. And we're having a lot of it, more and more. And I think there's several reasons of it. And I think this study will help us to understand why we're having more and more murder in our streets and in our cities. But at the very least, you and I need to understand what our attitude is and must be toward human life. Now, let's go to Genesis chapter 9. Here is the statement about murder after the flood. This is God speaking to Noah, and this is a very famous statement about the eating of blood. And we could get into the controversy of whether or not it's still wrong for Christians to eat blood, and you can have all that conversation from Acts chapter 15 and wonder whether or not whether we are bound by the 4 rules that were distributed to the churches, and I believe that we are bound by them. They were dogma, they were rules that were passed among the Gentiles. But let's go back to this verse. There was a special connection between the life is in the blood and the question of the sacredness of human life and life being, or blood being shed, a life being taken. The idea of murder is closely tied to the sacredness of the blood itself. Verse 5. Let's see, verse 4. But if you shall eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood, and for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning, for every beast I will require it from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. Okay. The reasoning and the argument is, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. There's the reason. God made man in his own image. The nature, the uniqueness of man is every human being is made in God's image. Therefore, his life is sacred. He's not an animal. An animal is not human. A human being is unique. He is distinct. His life, the life of a human being, is to be regarded as unique, as divine in some sense, so that it is to be so sacred that if anybody takes the life of a human being, his life is to be shed. Now, if it is an accident, okay, we're going to discuss that here in the book of Exodus. God understands. But there is to be, it should not be taken as a insignificant event. It should not be minimized. And so, what he says, there must be a reckoning. There must be a judgment. Now, when he says, by man shall his blood be shed, there is the responsibility of mankind to execute the judgment. And what is the judgment? It is the ultimate punishment. Now here you have, we're always told, is that not ironic? Is that not you becoming guilty of the thing that you're condemning? No, it's not. Why is it not? Why are you not becoming guilty of the thing that you're condemning?
God said it's okay.
Because it's God's sentence. You're carrying out a divine sentence. Actually, you're obeying a divine command. It's just like the case of a police officer who was obeying the law. When he says, stop in the name of the law, he is not speaking as an ordinary citizen. He's speaking as an officer of the law. Now, in this case, what he does, whenever the law executes an individual for disobeying the law, what they are doing is they are carrying out a sentence that shows the value of the human life. Now, if we can't do that, we're showing that we do not believe that the human life is worth that much. What we do, we bring the value of the law of the life down lower and lower. Now, that's been our problem now in our culture for some time. We don't respect what God has said about that. Now, let's go over to Proverbs 1. Before I get into Exodus, I'd like us to go back to the theme that we were talking about last week and what a father teaches his son in Proverbs 1. And this will be along the line of what Sam was talking about on Sunday. Proverbs 1 and verse 8. Hear, my son, your father's instructions, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pensions for your neck. What a beautiful way to start. Okay? What will they do for you? Okay? Verse 10, right away. First thing off the bat, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole. Like those who go down to the pit, we shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot with us, among us. We will all have one purse, my son. Do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird, but these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. Now, what's the attraction?
Material.
Pardon?
Material.
One more time.
Material.
Material good. Okay. Material things. The boast of the group, the gang. Okay. The boast of the gang is that we're going to be rich. Are there any gangs that are rich today? Yeah. Yes, there are. Yes, I can give you some stories of some very wealthy gangs. And they have gotten wealthy by trafficking in all kinds of things. And they've gotten that way by trafficking in assault and in murder and robbing old folks. They will lie in wait for an old geezer. You know, there was a group in New York that attacked a 70, how old was he? 73 or 4-year-old man, and beat him to death with some orange traffic cones. What do you suppose they were saying to each other? You know, he's too old to enjoy what money he's got. We're young. We can, we know how to really enjoy that money that he has on him, right? We deserve to have his money more than he does. We deserve it. Yes, Brandon?
I was reading Matthew 10:28. It says, "And fear not them who kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell."
Okay. What do you think that means? Explain that to me, Brandon.
It's pretty simple.
The Lord wants us to realize that there is a judge beyond the grave. Is that not right? That's right. Well, there is an attraction. I wonder about the youth who get pulled into these gangs. And I know that a lot of the attraction is there is a family environment with the gangs. Many times you have an absent father. A mother is having to raise the kids by herself, or maybe the mother herself is hooked on drugs. Sometimes the mother herself is a prostitute. You have a very dysfunctional home. The kids are raised in the streets, and so they're hungering for any kind of a family, and they're drawn together. They're like little wild animals. In some cases, they do have some sort of an extended family. But in any case, what they don't have is a mother and a father to tell them what this father is telling, or this father and mother is telling this son. Somebody needs to tell them, these people are lying to you. That there's going to be a trap. Now what's going to happen to these folks? Because the gangs are going to have wars among themselves and with the police and with the soldiers. Now I know personally, I know that there's a lot of gang activities along the Texas border, and there have been shootouts, and in nearly every case where they have gone up against the soldiers, they have been overmatched. They don't have any discipline and they don't have any training. Now, some of the gangs have better equipment. I understand that. You hear about every now and then, and they are glorified by some stories. But generally speaking, most thieves are undisciplined. And most thieves live very terrible lives. Most of them fail. Most of them are slaughtered. And most pictures that you see, they live miserable lives. And they're just pieces of meat. And they're young men when they die. They don't have this picture displayed for them. Now, murder is a terrible thing. The Lord wants us to see, when you kill somebody, it's not a small thing. Now you think that you'll be able to kill somebody and you won't feel anything. You're going to take what he has. You're going to take that and you'll feel good. Because you will have it and he won't have it, and so what? And you'll kill somebody else and you won't feel anything. You will feel something. Now it may be that you will cauterize your conscience. And the Bible talks about that in the book of Timothy. You can do that. What does it mean to cauterize your conscience? What is a conscience anyway? Okay.
You can sear it, like a burn that it's not going to go away.
Okay. What is a conscience? What is that? Okay, it's a voice. Okay. It's more than a voice, though, isn't it?
It's something that can be learned.
Okay. Well, you teach your conscience, but what does it
It's
do?
kind of a sense of judgment.
Okay. It judges you.
Right and wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
like an instinct almost that you have.
It's an instinct. I want to hear one more thing. Your conscience hurts you, does it not? When you do wrong? It gives you remorse. It punishes you. When you kill somebody, it makes you feel bad. At least at the beginning, it will. And the idea of a cauterized, we talk about a hardened conscience, the idea that you stop feeling it after a while, you know. And that is possible. It will happen. It will happen. The problem with someone having a hardened conscience as a bloodthirsty individual is that they become someone who has a thirst and a thrill in murder. They become like a man-eating lion. And then everybody hates them. They will. Nobody cares for a human being who is bloodthirsty. Nobody will trust a bloodthirsty human being.
And they still have to face God.
And when they die, they will stand before God, as Brandon has just said.
Yeah.
And they will have to face the wrath of God. Now, the Lord is, your father and your mother is trying to tell you the truth about this. And the Lord is trying to tell us the truth about this. Now, let's go back to the book of Exodus and notice how careful God treats the question surrounding homicide. Okay, that's a nice word we use today. Homicide. What does the word homicide mean?
The unlawful taking of a life.
Okay, when you see the side there, you have the idea of,
A human.
okay, the killing, and the killing of a Homo sapien, okay, so the idea of a human being. So the death of a human being. So in Exodus 21 and verse 29, here we read, verse 28, when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned and its flesh shall not be eaten. But the owner of the ox shall not be liable. But if the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and its owner has been warned, but has not kept it in, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner also shall be put to death. Okay, how about that? Why? The owner didn't kill anybody,
Responsibility.
but he is responsible. So if you have an ox, and he's a contrary ox, and he's gored somebody, they weren't killed, but you know, you can see he's a dangerous animal. But he's worth a lot of money. He's a good bull, you know, and he makes good healthy calves and makes a lot of meat. He's worth a lot of money. I don't want to put him down. I don't put him down. And he kills somebody. What have I done? I have killed somebody. It's my fault. Yes?
I was going to say, it also says, and not kept it in.
Mhm.
It's also negligence.
Right.
As well, in terms of.
You have
lack of
got,
responsibility.
there you go. You've got to be responsible for keeping in. There's a matter of being responsible for what you have. If a ransom is imposed on him, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever is imposed on him. If it gores a man's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox gores a slave, male or female, the owner shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Let's see. Numbers 35. Numbers 35, verse 16. These are all just laws that are dealing with what to do in the case of the death of a human being. Numbers 35, the last chapter, next last chapter in Numbers, verse 16. This is a chapter dealing with the cities of refuge where there's someone kills somebody, and it may have been unintentional. There may have been a struggle, and it's a manslayer, okay? It was not an intentional killing necessarily. Okay? Notice in verse 16, but if he struck him down with an iron object so that he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. And if he struck him down with a stone tool that could cause death, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. Or if he struck him down with a wooden tool that could cause death, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. The avenger of blood shall himself put the murderer to death. When he meets him, he shall put him to death. And if he pushed him out of hatred, or hurled something at him, lying in wait so that he died, or in enmity struck him down with his hand so that he died, then he who struck the blow shall be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when he meets him. But if he pushed him suddenly without enmity, or hurled anything at him without lying in wait, or used a stone that could cause death, and without seeing him, dropped it on him so that he died, though he was not his enemy and did not seek his harm, then the congregation shall judge between the manslayer and the avenger of blood in accordance with these rules. And the congregation shall rescue the manslayer from the hand of the avenger of blood. And the congregation shall restore him to his city of refuge to which he has fled. And he shall live in it until the death of the high priest who was anointed with the holy oil. But if the manslayer shall at any time go beyond the boundaries of his city of refuge to which he fled, and the avenger of blood finds him outside the boundaries of his city of refuge, and the avenger of blood kills the manslayer, he shall not be guilty of blood, for he must remain in his city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the manslayer may return to the land of his possession. And these things shall be for a statute and rule for you throughout your generations, and in all your dwelling places. All right, now verse 30. If anyone kills a person, the murderer shall be put to death on the evidence of witnesses. But no person shall be put to death on the testimony of one witness. Moreover, you shall accept no ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of death, but he shall be put to death. And you shall accept no ransom for him who is fled to his city of refuge, that he may return to dwell in the land before the death of the high priest. You shall not pollute the land in which you live, for blood pollutes the land, and no atonement can be made for the land for the blood that is shed in it, except the blood of the one who shed it. Now, we've got two questions here. If one person, one witness, saw the murderer, was he guilty or innocent? One eyewitness, was he guilty or innocent? There's one witness.
You're not supposed
I
to put him
mean,
to
yeah,
death.
he
He
can't
might
put
be
him to
guilty.
death. He might be guilty,
He
but
was
you don't
guilty,
have-
but he couldn't be put to death.
Yeah.
I think it says S on the
Let's see what you're trying to do.
Okay, he might be guilty. Might be. Okay. We really have a problem with this, and I'll tell you what. I have a good idea that there's going to be a lot of gossip about this for a long time to come, because a whole lot of people are going to believe that one witness. But there might be a lot of people who don't believe him too. But as far as the law is concerned, whether he was guilty or not, he could not be condemned on the testimony of just one witness. By the same token, in the New Testament, the church was called upon not to condemn anybody in the church without the testimony of at least 2 or 3 witnesses. Same thing. And so we are urged not to gossip about anybody without the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses confirming every detail. Now, what was this idea about a ransom? What's a ransom? Here's a man who has 2 or 3 witnesses that convict him of murder. What's a ransom?
I guess some like punitive damages?
I'm sorry?
Punitive damages, as we call it now, but I could be wrong.
Explain yourself.
So in our court today, you can, if you're held liable for something, you can get reparations for the damages. That's sort of how I took it, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so They say, okay,
I think you're kind of buying off the anger
okay.
of the person, which was interesting to me. I never really noticed that, most things have a value assigned, and, if the person, the ox killed the person, and he had been accustomed to doing it, that the man was to be killed, but he could be ransomed for whatever price. So the other person's, basically, okay, well, I'm gonna get your farm, and I get everything, else, but you saved your life.
Right.
That
Mhm.
because you have suffered a loss.
Right. What is your life worth? It depends on who you are, right?
Your life insurance policy.
What is Bill Gates' life worth?
The blood of Jesus. Ultimately, everybody's life is worth the sacrifice of Jesus.
Yeah.
Practical terms, guess however much
Yeah.
someone's willing to take at that time.
What is Chandler Stone's life worth?
Not that much.
Well, you're kind of getting at, or I think you're getting at, one of the big problems in our justice system. You got enough money to throw at a good lawyer, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, you muddy the waters and you get off.
Yeah.
And God is specifically saying here, you cannot let that happen. Doesn't matter how much ransom is put up. He doesn't give any stipulations. You do not allow that lie for lie.
We do that with settlement cases
Mhm.
a lot in this country.
Yeah.
People settle before it even
Yeah.
goes to trial.
Well, in Matthew 16, remember what Jesus says in Matthew 16? He said, in Matthew 16, verse 25, whoever would save his life will lose it, for whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his life? Or what shall a man give in return for his life? What will a man give in return for his life? Well, a man will give all that he has to save his life, will he not? Will a man not pay all that he has to ransom his life? What if a man has $1 million? Would he not pay that to ransom his life? Here you have a murderer. Okay, the city says, this man is the richest man in the village. He wants to give the city all of his possessions, all of his land to the city or to this family that they killed his son. Should we let him do that? What does this verse say? Can't do it. Why?
That would be a ransom for it.
The problem is the city is polluted by the murder. The blood shed must be avenged. That's the problem. Murder must be avenged. Murder is murder. It's not just whether or not we can accept that. If there's enough money that passes hands, we can accept that. God cannot. That's our problem. We can be bought off. God cannot. Yes, sir.
To an earlier point you were making about the idea of, my train of thought just crashed.
No, I'm saying.
Yeah, complete derailment. But, the idea that we can't allow justice to be corrupted by money, is just such an important thing. The fact that, life is demanded. I'm almost back on my track. I'm rambling to get back on track. But the idea that, it's crashing again. I better just give it up here. I'm sorry.
We're getting there. I know we're getting there.
Yeah, it'll probably come back. I'm sorry.
Senior moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, we have a few more minutes here. what I want is to be sure and see in all of this is that we are responsible to have a respect for life. Do you understand that when Jesus was teaching us about loving your neighbor and even loving your enemy, he was trying to retrain our sensibilities about the value of our neighbor and of human life. And do you remember when you get over into the latter epistles in 2 Peter and Jude, and that little quip there about the archangel Michael and his dispute with Satan, and how that he would not say a disparaging word to Satan in his dispute over the body of Moses, and he would only say, "The Lord rebuke you"? Why could he not curse Satan?
He's not God.
If we as human beings are made in the image of God, what about the spirits? What about the angels and even the demons? What image are they made in? Have you ever thought about that? Yes, Sam.
Sorry, I got it back. I do
Okay,
think
go
it's
ahead.
a good comment. I think it's a good comment. I wrote it down before I raised my hand. You said earlier that, people will argue, and I've heard this, that murdering somebody or killing somebody who's committed murder, you're just compounding the problem.
Yes.
But the reality is that if we would enforce this, there would be a lot less murder.
Absolutely.
People would then value life, which is your underlying point here, and take it much more seriously.
Yes.
If we would take it this seriously.
That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. Yes, Lucy.
It's a greater capital punishment.
Yes.
Capital punishment.
Well, God knew what He's doing. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
in all of this, we're getting to what Jesus said, Matthew 15, verse 19. Let me go ahead over to the New Testament right quick before our time runs out. Matthew 15, verse 19. Yes.
I'm thinking that I wrote about this, the shedding of innocent blood, abortion,
Yes.
cold-blooded murder. Exactly. All these women and doctors
Right.
that commit this crime.
I know it.
Murder. Cold-blooded murder.
That's right. And it would have been a real temptation for me to spend quite a bit of time tonight on that by itself.
Because if an adult, like if you're going to kill someone cold-blooded, that person can still defend
Yes.
him or herself. But a baby's in the womb, he cannot even defend.
Absolutely.
It's
See, it's human life. It is.
Just real quick, and I think that most of our sources, other Jewish writings outside of the Bible, but it's interesting to note that, what is at hand really here is intentionality. You did have like unintentional, you still lost something because you had to stay in the city of refuge. And then of course the one with the little, and accidental but through another means, you either going to pay for your life or whatever ransom. That there's this, from what we understand from the other writings, that even when they carried out a death sentence, there was so much preparation. They fasted. They really made sure they did the right thing. We find people in our justice system that have been framed, that there are a lot of people that are on death row that have been released from death row because of really flimsy evidence.
Right.
And, that gets to either corruption in the system and rushed judgment, even though it doesn't seem like things rushed. The Jews took it seriously that even if we are taking a life in recompense for a life that was taken, the process that we're going through, we've got to make sure that this is right.
Yes.
Before we do it. And that shows respect for life.
Yes. And the rule of 2 or 3 witnesses, we don't follow that rule. That would avoid the innocent, by and large, the innocent being put on death row in the first place. And the idea, also in the law of Moses, that if you had a false witness who convicted someone and they were executed, they were also executed. If it came out that they were the cause of the error of execution. So, if we would be consistent in respecting human life to that degree, like you say, that would minimize a great deal of the abuse of the whole system. Here in Matthew 15 and verse 9, Jesus is making the point, verse 19, I'm sorry. For out of the heart come evil thoughts. Number one, murder. Murder comes out of the heart. Galatians 5, 19 through 21. Works of the flesh. Murder. 1 John 3 and verse 15. He who hates his brother is a murderer.